The problem with serving on an intergalactic council is that you spend most of your time listening to species brag about things they cannot actually do. I have been documentation specialist for the Galactic Maritime Coalition for 17 cycles now, and I have heard every ridiculous claim imaginable. The Vrelians insist their exoskeletons can deflect antimatter rounds. Spoiler alert, they cannot. 3 of them learned this the hard way during the Battle of Kepler, 442b. The Thoraxians claim their telepathic abilities let them predict enemy movements. Also, false. They just have really good pattern recognition software and terrible humility. But humans? Oh, humans take the prize for the most absurd biological impossibilities I have ever documented. My name is Korthax Valsheen, and I am a Zeltharian. We are a reasonable species. 4 arms, excellent posture, and a cultural dedication to factual accuracy that borders on obsessive. We do not make claims we cannot back up with empirical data. We do not tell stories about our abilities unless those stories can be verified in triplicate. So, when the human liaison officer told me that one of their soldiers had survived direct plasma fire, I did what any reasonable documentation specialist would do. I laughed, right in her face. For a full 30 seconds. Commander Jessica Reeves did not appreciate this. She stood there in my office aboard the Coalition flagship Determinate Justice, her arms crossed over her chest, her expression somewhere between annoyed and amused. Humans have very expressive faces, which makes reading them either incredibly easy or impossibly difficult, depending on whether they want you to know what they are thinking. "You done?" she asked, one eyebrow raised. I wiped the moisture from my primary eyes and tried to compose myself. "My apologies, Commander. It has been a long rotation. But surely you understand that what you are suggesting is physically impossible. Plasma weapons ionize matter at temperatures exceeding 12,000 degrees. The human body, like most carbon-based life forms, combusts at approximately 600 degrees. There is no feasible scenario in which a human could survive direct exposure to a plasma stream." Reeves smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Wanna bet? This should have been my first warning. Humans only smile like that when they are about to prove you wrong in the most spectacular way possible." "I do not gamble," I replied, adjusting my data tablet. "I document. If you have evidence of this alleged incident, I would be happy to review it and add it to the official records, assuming it passes verification protocols." "Oh, it'll pass," Reeves said. She tapped something on her wrist communicator. "Corporal Hayes, report to Documentation Chamber 7. "Copy that, Commander." A voice crackled back. Female. Young. Entirely too cheerful for someone who allegedly survived being flash-fried. I settled back into my seat, all 4 hands folded neatly in front of me. This was going to be entertaining. Humans were notorious for embellishing combat reports. Not outright lying, mind you. They just had a tendency to remember events as more dramatic than they actually were. A near miss became a direct hit. A stun became a kill. A minor injury became a heroic last stand. The door to my chamber slid open 3 minutes later, and Corporal Mira Hayes walked in. She looked perfectly normal. Well, as normal as humans ever look. Average height for her species, somewhere around 1.7 meters. Dark hair pulled back in what they call a ponytail. Brown skin. Sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail of my office in a single sweep. She wore standard coalition combat fatigues with a human military patch on her shoulder, and she carried herself with the relaxed confidence of someone who had seen actual combat and lived to talk about it. "Corporal Hayes reporting as ordered, Commander," she said, snapping off a crisp salute. "Reeves," returned it. "At ease. Corporal, this is Korthax Valsheen, our documentation specialist. He has some questions about the incident on Varos Station." Hayes turned to me, and I saw something flicker in her expression. Amusement, maybe. Or possibly pity. Sure thing. What do you want to know? I brought up the preliminary report on my tablet. According to the incident logs, you were part of a boarding team tasked with retaking Varos Station from Crithian pirates. During the operation, you encountered a sentry equipped with a Class 4 plasma repeater. The report states, and I quote, Corporal Hayes sustained direct fire from plasma weapon. Target neutralized. Corporal Hayes sustained minor injuries. End quote. That sounds about right, Hayes said, nodding. Minor injuries, I repeated, letting the skepticism drip from every syllable. From a Class 4 plasma repeater. Yep, Corporal, a Class 4 plasma repeater fires ionized gas at 12,400 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, human flesh would vaporize on contact. There would be nothing left to treat for minor injuries. Hayes shrugged. Guess I got lucky. Luck is not a variable I can document. Then, document this, she said, and before I could stop her, she grabbed the bottom of her shirt and lifted it. I am a professional. I have documented battlefield injuries from 73 different species. I have seen things that would make most beings lose their last meal. But what I saw on Corporal Hayes's torso made me question everything I thought I knew about human biology. There was a scar, a massive twisted burn scar that covered most of her right side, from her ribs to her hip. The tissue was discolored, raised in some places, sunken in others. It looked like someone had taken a blowtorch to her and then tried to put her back together with spare parts. That, Hayes said calmly, is what minor injuries look like when you get hit by plasma fire. I stared. All four of my eyes stared. How? I managed to say. Are you alive? Honestly? Hayes let her shirt drop back down. I was wondering the same thing. The doc said something about adrenaline, shock, and extreme stubbornness. Oh, and apparently I have a genetic mutation that makes my pain receptors work differently than most humans. So when the plasma hit me, my body kind of just decided not to die. That is not how biology works. Tell that to my biology. Commander Reeves was grinning now, actually grinning. Show him the other thing, Hayes. Oh, right. Hayes reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal case. She flipped it open to reveal a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. I had seen humans use these before. They were primitive, combustion-based stimulant delivery systems, and frankly, I found the entire concept disgusting. Humans deliberately inhaled smoke. It was baffling. Hayes pulled out one of the cylindrical paper tubes and stuck it between her lips. Then she did something that made my brain completely shut down. She walked over to the wall panel, tapped in a security override code that she absolutely should not have had, and opened the emergency plasma vent. A thin stream of superheated ionized gas hissed out, glowing blue-white in the filtered air of my office. Hayes, what are you doing? I demanded, jumping to my feet. That is a Class 3 safety violation. You could kill us all. Hayes did not answer. She leaned forward, held the cigarette to the plasma stream, and lit it. The tip of the cigarette caught fire, glowing orange. Hayes took a long drag, blew out a cloud of smoke, and closed the plasma vent. There we go, she said, sounding satisfied. Thanks for that, Corthax. Lighter died yesterday. I sat back down, slowly, very slowly. You just, I said, my voice coming out as barely a whisper, used a plasma vent to light a cigarette. Yep, that stream was hot enough to melt steel. Yep, you held a combustible material directly in it. Uh-huh, and you are not dead. Nope. Hayes took another drag and exhaled. Look, I know it sounds insane. Trust me, I thought I was dead too when that pirate opened fire. But here's the thing about humans. We are really, really bad at dying when we are supposed to. Commander Reeves stepped forward, her expression suddenly serious. Corthax, I know this goes against everything in your documentation protocols, but humans have a biological quirk that most species do not. We call it adaptability. Our bodies are designed to survive things that should kill us. We have redundant systems, rapid healing factors, and a nervous system that can override logic when survival is on the line. That is insane, I said flatly. Yeah, Reeves agreed. It really is. But it is also why we have survived every major conflict in the galaxy since we joined the Coalition. We do not give up. We do not die easy. And sometimes we do things that make absolutely no sense just to prove we can. Hayes nodded, taking another puff from her cigarette. Plus, plasma fire is not that bad once you get past the initial agony. I mean, yeah, it hurt like hell. Worst pain of my life. But I have had worse. You have had worse than being set on fire with ionized gas? Kidney stones, Hayes said immediately. Way worse. I looked at Reeves. Reeves looked at me. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. Finally, I pulled up my tablet and began typing. For the record, I said slowly, I am documenting this incident as verified. However, I am also adding a notation that human biology operates on principles that defy conventional scientific understanding. Fair enough, Reeves said. Hayes just smiled and blew another smoke ring. So, we good here? Because I have a debrief in 20 minutes, and I really need a shower. Fighting pirates is sweaty work. You are dismissed, Corporal, Reeves said. Hayes snapped off another salute and headed for the door. Just before she left, she turned back and looked at me. Hey, Corthax. One more thing. Yes? Do not ever tell a human something is impossible. We take that as a personal challenge. And then she was gone, leaving nothing behind but the faint smell of cigarette smoke and my completely shattered understanding of biological limitations. Commander Reeves waited until the door closed before speaking. I know that was a lot to process. A lot to process, I repeated. Commander, I have been documenting combat incidents for 17 cycles. I have seen soldiers survive orbital drops, vacuum exposure, and chemical warfare. But I have never, in my entire career, seen someone use a plasma weapon as a lighter. Get used to it, Reeves said. Humans have a way of rewriting the rules when nobody is looking. She left too, and I sat alone in my office, staring at my tablet. The incident report glowed on the screen, waiting for my final approval. I approved it. What else could I do? I had seen the evidence with my own eyes. Corporal Mira Hayes had survived plasma fire. She had the scars to prove it. And apparently, she had decided that the best way to demonstrate human resilience was to use a safety hazard as a convenience. This was going to require so much paperwork. But as I sat there, updating my files and adding new categories to my documentation system, one thing: human unpredictability, human pain tolerance, human complete disregard for safety protocols, I realized something troubling. If humans could survive plasma fire, what else were they capable of? I had a feeling I was going to find out, and I had a feeling I was not going to like it. 3 days after the cigarette incident, I received a priority summons from Admiral Torvaj, the Krellian commander overseeing Coalition fleet operations in Sector 9. This was unusual. Admirals do not typically concern themselves with documentation specialists unless something has gone catastrophically wrong. I reported to his office expecting bad news. What I got was worse. I got questions. Val Sheen, the Admiral rumbled, his massive form hunched over a tactical display. Krellians are built like living mountains, all muscle and bone plates. I need your assessment on human combat effectiveness. Specifically, their ability to withstand environmental extremes. Admiral, I am not a combat analyst. I simply document incidents after they occur. Yes, he waved a clawed hand dismissively. But you processed the Varos Station report, the one about the human who survived plasma exposure? Corporal Hayes. Yes, sir. Is it legitimate? I pulled up my tablet, calling up the verified files. I witnessed the aftermath personally. The injury was consistent with plasma burns, and the subject demonstrated unusual resilience. However, I should note that human biology appears to operate outside standard parameters. They have survival mechanisms that are difficult to quantify. Torvald's expression darkened. For a Krellian, this meant his facial plates shifted to a deeper shade of gray. That is what concerns me. We are preparing for a major operation against Syndicate forces on the mining colony of Helix Prime. Intelligence suggests they have fortified the facility with thermal defense systems. Temperatures in the combat zones will exceed 200 degrees Celsius. That would be lethal for most species, I said carefully. Exactly. I have already pulled my Krellian shock troops. Too risky. The Vrelians refuse to deploy without environmental suits, which will slow them down. The Thoraxians cannot function in high heat at all. Their neural tissue literally shuts down. He fixed me with a hard stare. But Commander Reeves volunteered her human squad for the operation. She says they can handle it. Oh no. Admiral, with respect, one incident of survival does not establish a pattern. Corporal Hayes may have been an anomaly. That is what I need you to determine. I want you embedded with the human combat team for this operation. Document everything. If they can perform in those conditions, I need to know. If they cannot, I need to know that too, before I get them all killed. This was not a request. This was an order, which is how I found myself 48 hours later aboard a troop transport heading toward Helix Prime, surrounded by 23 humans who were treating a potentially lethal assault mission like a casual outing. Hey, Corthax. Corporal Hayes called out from across the cargo bay. She was checking her rifle, a standard coalition plasma carbine modified with human attachments that probably violated 6 different regulations. You ever been in a ground assault before? No, I admitted. I typically review documentation after operations conclude, from a safe distance. This got laughs from several humans nearby. One of them, a massive male with arms like industrial equipment, grinned at me. Do not worry, Doc. We will keep you alive, probably. Probably? I repeated. Sergeant Marcus Lee. He introduced himself, extending a hand. I shook it awkwardly with one of my own. Human handshakes are an odd custom, but refusing seems to offend them. First rule of human combat operations is that nothing ever goes according to plan. Second rule is we survive anyway. That is not reassuring. It is not supposed to be. It is supposed to be true. Commander Reeves entered the bay, and the casual atmosphere vanished instantly. Humans have excellent discipline when they choose to use it. Listen up. We hit dirt in 15 minutes. Intel confirms Syndicate forces have activated thermal barriers around the primary mining shaft. Surface temperature in the target zone is currently 230 degrees Celsius and climbing. Several species would panic at this news. The humans just checked their gear. Environmental suits are optional, Reeves continued, but recommended for anyone who wants to keep their skin. Hayes, you going bare? Hayes looked up from her weapon. Yeah, suits slow me. Down. I will take my chances. Your funeral, said another soldier, a woman with short blonde hair and a scar across her jaw. Lieutenant Zara Kim. She introduced herself to me. I am the one who keeps these idiots alive when they do stupid things, which is constantly. I am sensing a pattern of reckless behavior, I observed. You have no idea, Kim said cheerfully. Last month, Hayes tried to spacewalk without a tether because she wanted to see if humans could navigate in zero gravity using just body momentum. Spoiler alert, we cannot. I had to fish her out of the void with a grapple line. Why would anyone attempt that? Because I was bored, Hayes called out, and because physics said I could not do it. Physics was correct. Physics is boring. The transport shuddered as we entered atmosphere. Through the viewport, I could see Helix Prime below, a scorched ball of rock and industrial complexes. Mining operations had stripped away most of the surface vegetation. leaving behind a landscape that looked like a war zone before the war even started. 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Thermal readings are spiking. It is going to be hot down there, people. Good, Sergeant Lee said, chambering around in his weapon. I hate being cold. The rear ramp dropped, and heat slammed into us like a physical force. Even with my environmental suit, I felt the temperature surge. My sensors immediately started screaming warnings. 247 degrees Celsius. Lethal for unprotected personnel. Lethal for most protected personnel. The humans charged out anyway. Hayes was third out the door, wearing nothing but her standard combat fatigues and a vest loaded with ammunition. No helmet, no gloves, just a human woman running directly into temperatures that should have killed her in seconds. Hayes, temperature check, Reeves barked over the comm. Hot, Hayes replied. Really hot, but manageable. Define manageable. I am not dead yet. This was insane. I stumbled down the ramp, my environmental suit struggling to compensate for the heat. Around me, humans were deploying in tactical formations, moving with practiced efficiency despite the hellish conditions. About half wore full environmental gear. The other half wore minimal protection. Lieutenant Kim grabbed my arm, steadying me. Stay close, Korthax. If you wander off, you will cook inside that suit. How are you not cooking? I demanded. She was wearing a helmet and gloves, but her arms were exposed. I could see sweat pouring down her skin, but she was moving, functioning, fighting, training, she said simply. Also, spite. Mostly spite. Ahead, the mining facility loomed like a fortress. Syndicate forces had fortified every entrance with automated defenses and heavy weapons. Plasma fire streaked across the scorched ground, kicking up molten rock where it hit. "Contact front!" someone yelled, and the world exploded into chaos. Humans have a saying that you cannot really understand someone until you see them in combat. I thought this was typical human exaggeration. It was not. They moved like a single organism, each soldier covering angles, calling out targets, advancing under fire with a confidence that bordered on suicidal. Hayes was in the thick of it, her rifle barking as she took down defensive turrets with precision shots. Then, the Syndicate deployed their heavy weapons. A massive plasma cannon swiveled toward our position, its charging coils glowing white-hot. "Scatter!" Reeves screamed. The humans dove in every direction. I tried to follow, but my suit was too bulky, too slow. I stumbled, fell, and looked up just in time to see the plasma cannon fire directly at me. This is it, I thought. This is how I die, vaporized by a weapon I spent my career documenting. Something hit me from the side, knocking me clear. I rolled across the superheated ground, my suit's integrity alarms shrieking. When I looked up, Hayes was standing where I had been a moment before. The plasma stream hit her square in the chest. Time seemed to stop. I watched, horrified, as the ionized gas enveloped her. Temperatures exceeding 12,000 degrees, wrapping around her like a living thing. She should have died instantly, should have vaporized, should have ceased to exist. Instead, she screamed, not a scream of death, a scream of rage. Hayes raised her rifle, still on fire, and shot the plasma cannon's power cell. The explosion was spectacular. A bloom of white fire that consumed the weapon and the Syndicate soldiers operating it. Then Hayes collapsed. Medic! Lee was already moving, his massive frame crossing the distance in seconds. He grabbed Hayes, dragged her behind cover. "Kim, we need emergency medical now." I scrambled over, my hands shaking. Hayes was alive. Impossibly, incredibly, she was alive. Her chest was a ruined mess of burned fabric and blistered skin, but she was breathing. Shallow, pained breaths, but breathing. "Status," Reeves demanded, sliding into cover beside us. "Plasma hit, center mass," Kim reported, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she cut away Hayes's ruined vest. Second degree, burns over 40% of her torso. She should be dead. But she is not, Lee said. But she is not, Kim agreed. Hayes opened her eyes. They were glassy with pain, but focused. Did I get it? She rasped. You got it, Reeves confirmed. Good. Hayes tried to smile. Told you plasma fire was not that bad. You are insane, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Yeah, Hayes agreed. Probably. But I am alive. You are alive. That is what matters. Kim was already injecting her with something, a human medical compound I did not recognize. This is going to hurt, she warned. Everything hurts, Hayes replied. What is a little more? The assault continued around us, but I barely noticed. I was too busy watching human medics work on a soldier who should have been dead 3 times over. They stabilized. Her administered treatments, and within 10 minutes had her back on her feet. You cannot fight, Kim said flatly. You need a medical facility. After we finish the mission, Hayes replied, picking up her rifle with hands that shook but did not falter. Hayes! After! And she went back into the fight. We took the facility. It cost us 3 wounded, none dead. The Syndicate forces surrendered after seeing humans charge through thermal barriers, plasma fire, and conditions that should have killed every living thing on the battlefield. On the transport back, I sat across from Hayes. She was wrapped in medical bandages, hooked up to monitoring equipment, but still conscious, still alert. Why? I asked. Why risk yourself like that? You could have let me die. Hayes looked at me with those sharp eyes. Because that is what humans do. We protect each other. We survive. And we do not give up, even when logic says we should. Your species is going to give me a breakdown, I said. She laughed. It turned into a cough, and Kim immediately checked her vitals. But she was still smiling. Welcome to working with humans, Korthax. It only gets weirder from here. She was right. My report to Admiral Torvaj was 17 pages long. I documented everything. The thermal resistance, the pain tolerance, the impossible survival, the sheer stubborn refusal to die that seemed to define human biology. The Admiral read it twice. Then he looked at me and said, So, humans really can survive anything. Not anything, I corrected, but far more than they should. Their biology operates on principles that defy standard models. They have redundant systems, extreme adaptability, and psychological resilience that borders on irrational. Combine that with tactical intelligence and pack-bonding instincts, and you have a species that redefines what survival means. In other words, the perfect soldiers. I hesitated. Or the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, depending on your perspective. 3 months later, Corporal Mira Hayes was promoted to sergeant. Her citation included valor under fire, tactical excellence, and extraordinary resilience. I ran into her in the commissary a week after the promotion ceremony. She was eating something called pizza, a human food that looked structurally unsound, but apparently tasted acceptable. Korthax! She waved me over. Sit down. I want to hear about your latest documentation project. I sat, carefully. Currently reviewing the Battle of Kepler Station. Standard engagement. No unusual incidents. Boring, Hayes declared. You should request assignment to more human operations. We make your job interesting. You make my job terrifying. Same thing. She took a bite of pizza, chewed thoughtfully. Hey, random question. You ever wonder why humans ended up the way we are? All tough and stubborn and refusing to die? Frequently. My theory is that Earth was trying to kill us for so long that we just got really good at not dying. Natural disasters, predators, diseases, ice ages, our planet threw everything at us, and we survived anyway. So, Now we are kind of built for surviving impossible things. It was the most philosophically sound explanation I had heard from any human. That is actually logical. Do not sound so surprised. Hayes grinned. We can be smart when we want to be. We just prefer to do stupid things because they are more fun. I shook my head, all four hands typing notes into my tablet. For the record, you humans are the most exhausting species I have ever documented. Thank you, Hayes said. We try. Another crisis. Another mission. Another chance for humans to do something impossible and survive anyway. Hayes finished her pizza, grabbed her gear, and headed for the door. Come on, Corthax. Let us go find you something interesting to document. I followed. What else could I do? After all, someone had to record the insanity. Someone had to document the impossible. And apparently, that someone was me. The problem with serving on an intergalactic council is that you spend most of your time listening to species brag about things they cannot actually do. But humans? They do not brag. They just do impossible things and then act like it is normal. And maybe, after 17 cycles of documentation, I was starting to think that for humans, impossible really was just another word for difficult. Or maybe they were all completely insane. Honestly, it could go either way.